Harry, man, thank you so much for being up and Adam. It's good to talk to you. Good to meet you.
I love it. I love being here. This is the first interview, by the way, I'm doing for the podcast. The podcast isn't even out yet, so
Yeah,
this is like a pre, interview.
this is
So I appreciate your interest.
happy to be the first. No, and I'm really, because I had, several listeners. I think you did your first
Yeah,
post maybe late August, third week in August.
yeah.
I had several listeners of mine go, "Hey, do you know this guy? Do you know this gal? Do you know who he's talking about? Do you know who this is?" I mean, and your stories and your TikToks, your reels on Instagram, they all say, Slow Airport, they drop a Tascadero, Paso. So to any local listening, and some of the listeners that have gotten a hold of me, you've reached out to. I don't know if you have a rapport with some of these people already, or if you're trying to get the word out more, but just to kind of establish, we're going to get into the whole thing. You don't live on the Central Coast anymore, did you? Where do you live?
For a short, I'll give you all the information you need, every bit of it. I lived in Atascadero. I lived literally right off exit 222 Del Rio Road, which, by the way, if you go to if you're coming north heading towards Paso, you go to the right and make a left. That Home to Suites is right there. That right off the highway. She lived to the left. I could walk to her house from that Home to Suites. And I lived there from the time that we kind of decided to be together in November of 2021, on and off through beginning of April of 2022. I was there. More often than not, I was there. I stayed for several months at a time.
Where's your home
period.
base? Like, where do you
I'm
rest?
in Vegas.
Vegas.
I'm in
Okay.
Vegas.
And
Yeah,
how long have you lived
yeah.
there? Like a
I've
long
lived there
time?
24 years. And I'll tell
Okay.
you what, when I moved here, I moved here in January of 2001. And my first business trip was a trip to Houston. And that's where I met Rachel. So I've known Rachel for coming up on 24 years. This is not a brand new relationship. She didn't slide into my life, 2 years ago out of the blue. This was a long-term emotional affair, for lack
Right.
of a better way to put it.
And is Rachel her real name?
It is her real name. Everyone's
That's
names are real. It's a fair question. I don't listen. At some point, my last name's going to come out. This is going to go and do what podcasts like this do, and we got to, you'll, I'm sure, want to know about how it's being produced and all that, and we can get to that. But this is going to make some noise, and sooner or later, my name will come out, and that's fine. But her last name doesn't need to come out now. I know from people I talk to that her name is there amongst the people that are on Instagram at a minimum.
Yes.
But I'm not going to confirm it to anybody. I don't think. I'm conflicted, Adam. I'm conflicted.
Well, look, I mean, look, it's so, the whole thing is just like, it's like, damn. And then, I'm just trying to kind of like piece this all together. If I say a last name of someone who I heard this might be, and then bleep it out, will you confirm if that's the right name?
Yeah,
I'll bleep out the name. I'll bleep it out.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to say it now, but I'm going to bleep it out and I'm going to cover my mouth. Is it?
I can confirm that's correct. Your guess is correct.
Okay, so
you did a little mispronunciation the way that you did it the third time, which is going to be bleeped anyway. I don't know why I'm saying that, but yeah, you're correct. That's okay.
All right. So, and this is just coming from some people, listeners, and again, like you think you said one of your posts, like it is a small town. People know this and that. So you only lived here for just kind of like a blink of an eye, not even a full year, as you were becoming involved with this woman, Rachel.
Mm-hmm. Rachel and I, met in 2001, and we're kind of in and out of each other's life for a bunch of time. 01, 02, and then time passed and she had kids. And then around 2011 or 12, my first marriage was breaking up, and I went looking for her. I say over and over again in the podcast, she's the most beautiful woman I've ever known. I'd always thought she never left my head. So we started to connect again in 2012. And then for those 10 years after that, we were kind of in and out of each other's lives. We would see each other when we could. And it was it was a physical affair, it was an emotional affair, but I thought that she was divorced from her husband at that point. So 10 years ago, 12 years ago at this point, she said, my husband, Mark, is out. I've divorced him. I haven't told this story on the I've told it on the podcast, which is not out, but I haven't told it on Instagram and I have not told it on TikTok. But she accused Mark of being an awful abuser. And from the beginning, when I knew that that's who he was, that's who I thought he was, I wanted to protect her. I wanted to help her. I wanted to do whatever I could. Turns out all that were lies. Her husband is a sweet man, come to find out. But I've known her and have been involved with her for that period of time. And then finally in 2021, she was contacting me a lot over that summer. And then we got together, and I remember we went to Brophy Brothers in Santa Barbara on August 27th, 2021. And I remember sitting there looking at her thinking, I knew you when you were a kid. I've known you half of your life. And you're just beautiful and you're put together and you're smart, because she presents like no one else. And, we had dinner, we had some drinks, and we were outside waiting for our Uber downstairs. And I remember, like, having an intimate moment in the parking lot with our arms around each other and whispering to her, if it wasn't for proximity, I would be all in with you. It's time. Like, it's time to figure out what this is. It's 21 years or whatever it is. Can this be something? And that led me to this. Yeah. And ultimately by November we were together, and, I was in and out of Atascadero. We'd still meet in Santa Barbara periodically. As it turns out, she was still married to Mark at the time. The way that she got out of the house to get to Santa Barbara is she told her family that she was a nurse and she was doing overnight stays. She was a traveling nurse, so she'd go to Santa Barbara for a night or two. But really what she was doing is she was meeting me during that time. And the whole thing was a lie, as it would turn out.
When do you
So
start to piece together, like, hey, something isn't just as it seems? And then when do you confront her with this? How does that go?
Here's the thing. There are two answers to that. I never confronted her until I knew they were lies, until I was told it was a scam. And shame on me for that. I was so deeply in love. Remember, if you follow the story, we decided to be together in November 3rd, really is the date that we picked each other. But by the 20th of December, we found out she was pregnant, a lie. And we found out that she had cancer, again, another lie. So all I thought and all I felt from December 20th of 2022 until I found out that she had been scheming and scamming the whole time was that she was dealing with cancer. So literally from the moment she told me she had cancer, I was up in Atascadero basically full time. And then she started to make all these excuses about why she couldn't see me. There was a CPS investigation with one of the daughters, which I'll talk about. And then she claimed she went into the hospital on June 5th of 2022 and was immediately sick from chemo and was in protective isolation. And that's at the point where I couldn't see her again. The last time I saw her was about a month before that, in May of 2022.
So this relationship and all of this, this whole ride is really like 6 months.
Yeah, it's funny because on one hand, yeah, it's 6 months, but on the other hand, it's 20 years.
Yeah.
Of like, look, Adam, when I said to her, I need to come see you, like on the beginning, like the 1st of November, I said, I'm getting on a plane, I'm coming to see you, Wednesday night. And I saw her and I said, let's do this, let's be together. Within a week, I was in love with her, which just meant that I had been in love with her the whole time. So I was blind to that. And it wasn't just 6 months in my mind. It was that 6 months of time. But when she went into the hospital, Adam, I spent $500 363 days here. I alienated everyone in my life. I spent all of my time talking to her, thinking she was in the hospital, thinking I was this, COVID taught us how to be virtual everything. You and I are doing an interview, I've got some broadcasting in my background. 10 years ago, this would have been a phone interview or I'd have been in studio, right? That's,
Right.
the way of the world is Zoom and StreamYard, what we're doing. So I knew what I could do for her. I knew that I could talk to her like this. I knew she loved the sound of my voice. I play guitar. So I would play guitar. I would talk to her. She would send me a text. I would respond with a video. I gave her everything in me that I knew how.
Yeah,
And
don't take this the wrong way or disrespectfully. Have you
no,
been in history been this impulsive with love or this impetuous and just like, just I'm gonna jump off and go? Has this been a thing for you or what?
God damn it, that's a good question. you know, I don't think this impetuous, but I'll tell you what, the thing about this relationship for me is that I knew as soon as I said, hey, can we give this a try? I knew I would have to be all in. And I was never a guy that was all in before, right? Meaning, like, I have to be emotionally available with this woman or I'm going to lose her. And I had never done that. I was always a guy that did just enough in relationships that, I've been married twice. I have had a slew of wonderful women pass through my fingers, not because they were the wrong women, but because I was the wrong guy at the time. So I finally learned how to do what I was supposed to do in a relationship. And then karma comes and bangs me over the head and goes, guess what? It was all a lie. And that's what
What do
this
you
was.
think about why? And we're going to get into the production of all this and how this journey that we're talking about here becomes an actual podcast in the fall that's going to be released. How do you think she got away with all the lies? And why would she do this to her husband, her kids, her friends, you?
You're asking some great questions. The simple response to that piece of it is that, I didn't really give her any money. I gave her a few $1,000, which with a couple is nothing over a period of time. She's got a very nice engagement ring, which I bought her, which was not cheap. But it wasn't for money. Most of these scams revolve around something that's tangible, right? I have a text message. I think I'm going to release it in the next couple of days from her to her husband that says, I lied to Harry about cancer for attention. Like, think about that. She knew what this was doing to me. And she could have at any point said, listen, I got to talk to you. I got to tell you something. And she could have come clean. I probably would have come up with a way to forgive her. But she did this for grins. She did it for attention. She has always, from the time she was a teenage girl, she lost her dad when she was 9. Something else happened. I don't know what. I have some suspicions. I'm not going to speculate here. Something happened to her. And she has been coveting the attention. It could just be as simple as her dad's passing. She has been coveting the attention of men consistently, year after year. She's been married to Mark for 23 years. I'm not the only guy she was with. I've got like 7 other guys that I've tracked down. And by the way, she was married for the first time when she was 20 to a guy who was a cop in Houston, and he became an assistant district attorney. And this is a badass dude. I talked to that guy like 2 months ago while I was recording the podcast. He's still not okay. She literally is, the Hall & Oates song, Man Eater. This is
Watch
what
out,
she
boy, she will chew
does.
you up. Do you think she is crazy? Is she evil? Is she both?
I wouldn't use the term crazy. I think I would use pathological and probably sociopathic. The 3 different mental health professionals I've spoken with, 1 my own, and 2 I've talked to about being on the podcast with me, have said that she has a pathological and sociopathic element, which make her dangerous. And I thought, dangerous, like dangerous? Like, I don't know. I mean, listen, Adam, I'm over 6 feet tall. I weigh 240 pounds. I've been in the same martial arts program 25 years. Shit doesn't scare me. But when the therapist said she's dangerous, I'm thinking to myself, oh gosh, what am I in for?
Right. So tell me, because
it's probably more emotional than anything else.
On the tile to the pinned post, it says in the top left corner, executive produced by Billy Bush. This is television's Billy Bush from Extra and who we know. Is this the same?
Yeah, Access Hollywood, Extra, NBC, The Today Show, all that stuff. That's Billy. And Billy and I mean, there's a couple of things. Billy is part of this story, and I'll tell you that in a second. But Billy and I go back over 30 years at this point. He is one of my closest friends, number one. Number two, he was in my inner circle, and I didn't talk to many people when Rachel was sick, or I thought she was sick. Billy and I talked once or twice a week sometimes. And before she got sick, Billy and I had dinner with Rachel and his girl, Allie, and Rachel's been in Billy's house. Rachel at one point was on a vacation, claimed to be on a vacation in Mexico when she got COVID and faked her miscarriage. Well, I needed to get her out of Mexico, and Billy's got the resources to do that. So I reached out and we talked about it. And he said, "Where's she staying?" I said, "Well, she's at Moon Palace in Cancun." And he said, "No shit." He said, "I know the 2 guys that own that place." He said, "Let me make a phone call and I'll get back to you." And he called me back 2 hours later. I saved the voicemail. It's on the podcast. And he said, "Your girl's not here. She checked out." And I said, "That's weird. She has COVID. She can't leave." And then I sent her a message. It was the first, Billy Bush was the first red flag in this. And I texted her and I said, "Hey, Billy's trying to get you out, and he can get you out, but you're not there." And she said, "Well, I'm in these, there's a wing of the hotel for COVID patients, and I'm technically unregistered, and I'm not part of the resort." There was this BS that she fed me. But if I talked to Billy after that. He said, "I am telling you she's not there." And I said, "I'm telling you she's there. Like, why would she lie to me?" And
Right.
I should have listened to Billy Bush.
I
We
should have
wouldn't be
listened to
having this
Billy Bush.
conversation
How
right
many
now,
stories?
Adam.
How many stories end up with that? I should have listened to Billy Bush. Let me ask you. So,
Yeah.
what is his role in here? Because you listen to the podcast, and I'll play a little snippet if it's cool of the episode 1 that you sent me. It's not even out yet, but
Yeah.
it's very produced and done up. I mean, are you producing this? I know you have some, production and radio in your background. Who's producing this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are a couple people involved. There's what's called sound design. When you listen to a podcast these days, you hear music, you hear sound effects, you hear, little things that help to tell the story. I'm a voice guy. I get paid to do this kind of work, just not with my own story. I get paid to read books and do voiceover stuff. One of the things I do, I've got a guy named Andrew Reagan who is a small filmmaker and a composer. Every bit of music that you hear in the podcast was composed by him. I did the majority of the writing. I talked to Billy about some of the writing. I've got another friend who helped me with it a little bit, but Billy is involved in it, in every piece of it with me. But it's my story, right?
Are we releasing it? Is it going to be like
question.
through a certain pod? Is it like iHeartRadio or Westwood One, or are we just kind of putting it on all podcasts? Is it getting sponsored, or is it just kind of you're getting out this story? Where are we kind of at with the distribution of it all?
We're talking to a bunch of different people. It's interesting that you bring up Westwood One. I don't know if you were ever a Howard Stern listener. Were you a Howard Stern listener?
Sure, absolutely.
So you know the name Tim Sabean.
Yeah.
Sabian's another friend of mine for longer than Billy's been a friend of mine. and he ran Westwood One. They were the biggest podcast house in the country for some time. So between Billy and Tim Sabian and a couple of friends in broadcast, I want to make sure that this goes out with a splash. It's not about making money or a book or any of the things that people see with it. To me, it's about how many people will get to hear my cautionary tale. That to me is what's most important. And I could release it tomorrow, Adam. I could be on 35 platforms in 2 days. I know how to do that. But I don't want just 35 platforms. I want iHeart or Spotify or Westwood or somebody who can hear a story told by me with passion and emotion and good sound design and something that sounds good. It's important for me that things sound good. It is good.
You're a perfectionist. You want the production to be solid. Are all these episodes done? How many are in the can? I heard episode 1. How many are done?
I have 12 episodes of the first season completed. And there's a couple of surprises in season 2. I have the first episode of season 2 done. And Rachel's daughter is going to be on with me, a 2-part episode talking about what Rachel did to her, what it was like growing up in that home. You know, the family is fractured right now. I'm not sure what day you're going to release this podcast, but yesterday I talked about, or today I talked about the fact that Rachel has alienated her daughters from each other in addition to other family members. There's parental alienation that's happening, and Madison, the daughter formerly known as Madison, will speak to that and did speak to that. So I've got a total of 12, 13. I was told there was no math today, Adam. 4, 5. I was told I got 16 episodes all done. 12 will come out, in the beginning. That will give me an opportunity. We'll do 1 a week when they're ready. And that'll give me 12 weeks to write the rest of season 2. But I haven't even got to the horror stories of what she claims happened while she was in the hospital, but she never was. She's a better storyteller than I am.
And then when do we release episode 1? Do we know?
That's what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for Billy. I'm waiting for there are a couple of things that are happening in the next few days and next week. I want it to be out now. I want it to be out beginning of September. I don't want it sitting here. Mentally, it's also not healthy for me, Adam.
Yeah.
Because I'm writing this, and what's become even more difficult is TikTok and Instagram, because I'm reliving this stuff in greater detail than the podcast. Right? There are some things I'm doing that I didn't do in the podcast, and it's emotional for me still.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you're revisiting a lot of these, and anytime when deceit and someone's pulling something over on you, especially, someone you consider yourself, I'm a smart guy. I'm together. How did the wool get pulled over my eyes so much? I can understand. It's very disconcerting. So we don't know when the first episode's coming out. Do you think she knows? What are her thoughts about you doing a podcast? I mean, I'm sure she has seen what has been transpiring. She doesn't live here anymore, right? You say she lives in Dallas?
Oh no. Oh, she's in Paso.
Oh, she's still in Paso.
She split from her house in the Atascadero and moved in with her boyfriend. She was juggling at one point when she got caught. She was juggling this boyfriend that works with her at the airport. She was still living at home with her husband. And I was here in Vegas thinking that she was in the hospital dying and paralyzed. I mean, it's the most ridiculous thing. You literally would have to spend hours going through all of my videos to really grasp, or the whole podcast to go, okay, now I understand it. And the podcast, by the way, it weaves in and out of present day to 20 years ago. It's written in a different way. It's not linear, meaning
right.
Not in order. So she lives in Paso. There was another question that you asked, and
she's still working at the airport.
She still works at the airport. Oh, so you asked me if she knows the podcast is coming out. So the way that the podcast happened was, while I thought she was in the hospital, I began to write her like love letters, like 1,500 to 2,500 words. And then, because she wanted to hear my voice, I recorded them. So I have this whole audio series, 80 episodes of something called Harry Loves Rachel. If you piece them all together, it's 26 hours of me telling her our story, things about our future, things about, everything our life could be and will be, and things that we've done over the years. So after I found out she scammed me, literally like 2 or 3 days later, I wrote Harry Loved Rachel. That was the name of this. Harry Loved Rachel. And I sent it to her because we still had communication after I found out she scammed me. And I sent it to her in January or February, and she wrote to me, and I posted her response on Instagram. You can look at the pictures from over the weekend. She said, "You making a podcast about my life makes me sick. I deserve it." And then she went to, as soon as other people knew, like people at the airport, as soon as word started to spread, she denied knowing me. And that set me off. And I thought, who are you to say that about me? I gave you my life for 563 years. And by the way, I think our story needs to be told. And it's not just your story, Rachel.
561 days. You said years.
560, man, 563.
You're like a vampire.
I am.
Now explain the 561, because if you were together for 6 months, you're going like to the times before that.
I'm talking only about the time I was in the hospital.
Oh, got it.
So from June, you could do the math, from June 5th, 2022 to December 13th of 2023. That's 563 days. So for 562 nights, I slept with the same device I'm talking to you on right now, this phone, under my pillow, because I thought that's how sick she was. I was going to get a phone call that she had passed.
Oh, so, we got to keep in contact and then catch up again. This is, it's beyond interesting. And just the fact that, I was, as people were asking me to, what do you know about this, Adam? And I didn't, and I reached out to you, and you were, gracious enough to respond back quickly. And we had a nice friendly conversation, and here you are. You said right before this, you said you can ask me anything you want. If I don't want to answer it, I won't. So, no, I guess I still probably have a ton more questions. I'll think of them. I'll get back to you again. And then we'll listen to this podcast as it comes out, because I'm truly intrigued by the story and just want to know more.
If I were you, I would label this as part 1 of our time together.
Okay, cool.
Because we'll do it again. When you've got some more questions together, you just buzz me and we'll do this again. There will always be more questions.
Oh, sure.
I know there will. So
yeah, it just seems like such a menagerie of chaos and just crapola. I can't even imagine what you're going through. Well, I appreciate you getting on here. Again, we're talking about this podcast that's going to be coming out in the fall called The Messenger, the Rachel cancer story. It's about a woman who lives in Paso. And like we said, this is a 100% true story.
Yeah, it's 100% true. And I'm not sure my story is. And I will be publishing pictures of Rachel and I blacked out her eyes. I don't want to use a full image, but tomorrow, I don't know when you're going to run this, but tomorrow I'm going to post a handful of pictures of she and I to just continue to dispel this. I don't have any idea who this is that's made this podcast about me.
Have you run into any type of hurdles or, I don't know what the word, cynicism with this that bothers you? What have you run into in the last few weeks putting this out on TikTok and Instagram?
There are a handful of people, especially at the beginning, the women at the airport said, well, Rachel said that, you were hired by Mark, her husband, to write this podcast, and that you don't have a relationship. She doesn't know you. She never said she had cancer. She didn't do this. I said, well, and they said, what do you have for proof? I said, what do you want? You want pictures of us? Bam. I sent the woman 5 pictures of us, not blacked out. I said, oh, by the way, I have a tattoo of her initials. I showed it in the video on Saturday. Here, I was married twice and never put anyone's initials on me. I have her initials tattooed right here on my chest. Okay. So I sent him a picture of that. I sent him the ultrasound with her name on it. I sent them handwritten notes. They would recognize Rachel's handwriting because they work with her. Love notes from her to me, notes from the hospital when she was keeping her health diary. She would write and she would take pictures and send them to me. So, I got a message late last night from someone who said, why don't you just post pictures? If this is really true, show us the two of you together. Great. So I took some time this morning. I found a bunch of pictures of us. I colored her eyes out, and I'll post them tonight, or I'll post them tomorrow. I'll post the handwritten letters that she wrote me and the hospital notes. And I mean, this is, in a way, Adam, this is